Mastering electronic dance music. Logic Pro.
Hey guys, welcome back to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro, and this is the second video in my series introducing music theory. So this video I'm going to talk about relationships in scales, and this will kind of give you an idea of what notes particularly sound good together and how you could actually start to build melodies. So what I got here is I have this scale that I was talking about before. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to go with the major scale. Minor scale is not more difficult. It's just I prefer to work on that one when I'm doing simple things because I want to talk about also the names of notes. So you'll notice that everything is marked C here for when it's a C note. And you could have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So it's basically, it starts from A and then goes to G, except for traditionally, for some reason, C was chosen as the starting note for marking things. But basically it goes A to G and then repeats itself, and A would be right here. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is last video I was talking about sharps, and I didn't say flats, but they're also flats. And how do you figure out if it's a sharp or a flat? Well, all the white keys are regular notes. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Let me see if I can pull up this musical typing here. That'll make it easier to see here. So please excuse the, here we go. Slightly bigger. This will make it a little bit easier to see. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Yeah. Okay. So there's no H. Sorry, guys. But anyway, so each of these is a regular note. And how do you find out if it's a sharp or a flat? Well, to find C sharp, all you do is you find a C, and then you find the black key that's to the right of it, aka you find the black key that is at a slightly higher note. So you have C and C sharp. So they kind of sound sour together, and I'll talk about that in a second. But right now, I just want to cover flats. So you have A, and you can have A flat, which is right here. But keep in mind, this is the same thing as G sharp. So A flat is the same thing as G sharp. How do you distinguish which one? You really don't, because essentially it doesn't matter. So whatever you want to name it is fine. People know what you're talking about. Although typically you'll find that typically you have C sharp, D sharp, C, D, and then E only has a flat, and then F has a sharp, and so I tend to call them sharps. I don't tend to go for flats, but there might be a reason as to why there's a sharp and flat and not just sharps or just flats. But essentially just know that flat is to the left, sharp is to the right. And if you want to think in terms of this, which makes even more sense, sharp is higher, flat is lower. So flat of G, sharp of C. So it's higher and lower. That's how you can distinguish it. So that's the simplest relationship there. That isn't really musical relationship, but more of a terminology relationship. So now I want to talk about relationships between notes and their sounds. The first and biggest one is the seventh note, and I could be calling this wrong because I know a seventh note. Or a chord with a added seventh, it sounds different than a chord made of a seventh note. So, so we have the C major chord here, or C major scale here, and I'm not good with terminology, so just bear with me here. So you have C, and if you count up 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you have a note that will automatically sound very good with C. So you have. So it's a very powerful chord already, and it's only 2 notes. So, and if you want to bounce back between these, you can tell that there's already a big difference there. Now, that's one of the best relationships to use when you're going somewhere with a melody. So another relationship that's very fundamental is the octave, and I talked about the octave briefly. And it's just 12 notes difference between the two. So basically, you find whatever note you want, and then find the next occurrence of it up or down. You play it at the same time. So I'll play this on a keyboard here, and this is just an A at an octave. So it's basically, it just sounds fuller than or alone. So it kind of just sounds like it just sounds fuller. It doesn't sound like it actually has a musical accentuation per se. So that's an octave there, and that means that you could bounce things around. So you have so I showed you the 7th, and so that's you go up 7. Now please note, you kind of have to go up because that's what your root is, what you're counting from. If you go to A and you count down 7, then you're actually what you're doing is A is not your root of the chord anymore, because you'll be creating a chord by doing this, but it will be the one at the bottom. So because I'll talk about chord structure in the next video actually, and talk about how that goes. But anyway, the 7th note difference is a very good difference. So bouncing between those sounds good. So you just have that 7th note difference. Now, if you drop down 2 notes, then you have a 5 note difference between the two. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those sound good together. And between those two, if you actually bounce between them, it sounds pretty darn good. So you already almost have like something you could use for an intro there. And that's very, that means you could break this down in a very simple way. Now, how to make something that's very intense sounding. Now, this is used a lot in drops and stuff like that because you get a very intense sound, and you find it also very often in minor scales because a minor scale has a whole step and then immediately after has a half step, so it sounds a bit more intense. But so you can already kind of tell that I said it has something to do with the half step, and it definitely does. What a half step is 2 notes that are right next to each other. So you kind of get this, you kind of get this scary sound. And what does this mean? Well, for instance, so I have a, let me start on C here. And I'm going to bounce around. I'm just going to play. So we know that a C minor scale has a whole step and then a half step. So it goes, and you can already tell that's gonna sound like, haha. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah. So you can already tell it sounds a lot more epic, and that's because you're getting 2 notes, these 2 notes that are right next to each other, and you get a lot of tension. So. And what I was doing here with the C's is I was just taking a whole bunch of C's and playing them together, and you get a very, very simple but intense sound because it's all just C, but I'm playing a whole bunch of them, so it builds up quite a lot. So, same, basic. And then you could like shift around and do more stuff with that. But so that's the 3 note relationships. Let me write that down here so you can kind of see. The first one is the octave, which is 12 notes. Then you have the 7th, which is 7 notes, and this is the probably the most fundamental one you'll use. And then you have the 5th. Which is, it's like the 7th, except for a little bit more intense. So like I said, that's the 7th, and then this is the 5th. So it's just got a little bit more tension there. So note difference. And then you have the half step, which is very intense, and that's a 1 note difference. So So you could already tell that with these simple things, you could make melodies. So like, let me start, let me just show you how easy you can make this. So I'm gonna just do, I'm just gonna have a C here, and then I'm gonna jump up to 7 note difference here. Let's see if I can. And conveniently, if you see there in the corner of that window that just popped up, it says +7, so that means I bumped it up by 7 notes, and that makes it really easy. And then I could drop, so let's hear what this sounds like. So you see already right off the bat, I just created a melody that sounds good, and all I had to do was know my relationships of notes, and then I had to double check based on these relationships to see if it's in key. Now, by default, if you start on the root note of a scale, which I said, so I was doing a C major scale here, and if I started on C and then I do a 7th and then a 5th from C, then it's definitely going to be in key, because that's the definition in part of a scale. Specifically major and minor. I believe this applies for both, where if you have a 7th or a 5th, it'll always be in key as long as you're starting the counting from the root note. Now, obviously, the way you get chord changes is you have your initial, and then you could get this, duplicate it to the next part, and then except you want to shift it up 1 note. So what I could do is I could grab the whole of this and then shift it up 1 note. But I'm going to warn you, this right here lines up, you could tell. But what about these two? And that's definitely something worth checking. Okay, so if we look up here, this one does line up. And I can already tell, this one does line up. So it actually won't sound bad. Does it sound good? It does, it sounds okay. Personally, I wouldn't do this because it sounds too simple. But having the exact same thing, just 1 note up, I'd add some variation, like something like that. That adds a bit more variation, so that you kind of get a different sound. But that's at its base form how you make a melody. You just get these relationships that you know, and then you make a melody off of it. So now I'm going to switch something here. I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to drop this down. And now I'm in the minor scale. So let me make a more interesting melody off of this. So I have this, and then I'm going to bump up to da, 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 da. So let's see what this sounds like. Let's pull this 1 note over here. So we have... There we go. So now I have a bit of a darker sound, and it sounds like you could pull it somewhere really interesting. So let me loop this here. So now I'm going to use the 7th here. You could tell that I used the 2-note relationship right here. How it's just they're right next to each other. Now I'm going to pull it up to a 7th. And let's see if I think I did the counting right. Yep, 7. Now let's see what this sounds like. So you can already tell that I'm building a melody off of this. And all you have to do is just mess with the timing and the placement of notes, and then you could get some interesting things. Let's try this. Now the question is this note in key? I think it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Let's try this. So you can already tell that it's really simple if you just experiment and you know these relationships and you can start building stuff off of them. Now, I'm going to do one more thing and you could kind of see the difference you can make here. So I'm going to choose one of these. I'm not sure which one yet because I don't know where this will land for sure. But I'm going to go up a 7th from one of them. So let's see. I'm at a 7th from this one. And unfortunately, if you'll notice, it doesn't land on one of the notes. So if I play this, it'll sound off. It doesn't sound good. So I have to decide where I want to pull it up to. Since if I pull it up one note, I'll be on a 7th from this note, which is a note I just recently played, then it'll actually sound okay. And if I want to instead, so I want it closer to this note based off relationship with this one. So instead of going to 7, which doesn't land in my scale, I can pull it down to by 2 notes, and then I'll have it in the scale again, and it'll be a 5th relationship. So that actually sounds better than the original by way of, in terms of both of these 2 parts here. So that's how you make a melody. It's all about these relationships between notes, and it does take a lot of experimentation and variation, especially with the timing, so that you don't get something that's mono, like it's just the same pattern over and over again. That takes your own personal individuality and your own creativity to design something that sounds unique and good. That's not just like the same thing that everybody else has wrote before. As you could tell, that one progression I was playing, that kind of sounds like Hurricane by 30 Seconds to Mars. And that was not intentional, actually. I was just smashing some keys, and I ended up with that. So what they did was they took a rather simple pattern that can be easily created, but they made it their own by by accentuating it with other notes. And I'll talk about accentuating with other notes simultaneously in my next video, which is on chords. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and keep your eyes peeled for that video because that'll give you a bit more insight on how to create chords and chord progressions behind your melodies so you get even more epic sounds. So, see you then.